Okay. We are in a moment in history when urgency and opportunity are coming together. Urgency because the climate crisis is worsening faster than we are able to deploy solutions, or faster than we are deploying solutions. And opportunity because the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, offers hope for getting us moving in the right direction at a much faster pace. How much faster? The governor of New Jersey put it this way. He said it's rocket fuel. He said they had the objective in that state of reaching 100% clean energy by 2050. And because of the IRA, they are changing that objective to 2035. So the story of the IRA is an exciting one, and it brings fresh hope. But its promise can only be realized if people know about it and take advantage of its benefits. Private industry is already doing that. They're recognizing what Janet Yellen said, which is this legislation into an economic opportunity.
Yes, it is.
But few people are aware of the benefits that are there for individuals, and that's why we're eager to help spread the word. I say we, I've got several of my colleagues here. Because while more and more of us are getting really concerned about the climate crisis, we tend to act on the basis of issues like cost and health, myself included. Slide. So what are the Inflation Reduction Act and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law? We're going to overview the legislation, why it's a game changer for the planet, and then what's in it for you. Essentially, it helps us answer yes to the third of three questions which are before us. One, must we change in order to address this crisis? Two, can we change? And then three, will we change? So we're going to go through why the answer to the first two questions, must we change and can we, is absolutely yes. And then we'll describe how the IRA and the BIL help to build the will to change. And that's what's so exciting. Essentially, they make the clean stuff a lot more appealing than the dirty stuff, meaning clean energy, clean transportation, clean homes, clean appliances. So, quick disclaimer, we are not experts. Our purpose here is to pique your interest and to give you a place to get started on taking advantage of these benefits for yourself. Don and Allison and Wayne and Canute and Todd are with me to help answer questions. They're expert in different parts of this, and I'm very glad to have them here. I'm going to talk for 20 minutes, and then we'll have time for Q&A. I also have 4 handouts. Please don't leave without taking these. They give a lot more detail than we can go into in 20 minutes, and they give you a place to start. It can get complicated and overwhelming. It's good to start small. Slide. Okay, so these pieces of legislation were hard won, and they end 50 years of relative inaction on climate. It's been called the biggest and best climate law ever anywhere in the world. And one of the reasons it passed is because of grassroots activism helping it along. Slide. What is it? The IRA allocates $369 billion to energy security and climate solutions. It's likely, however, to be far larger than that. Goldman Sachs predicts about 3 times as large, and that's because some of the tax credits included in the legislation have no limit on them. We're going to spend most of our time talking about the IRA because it has more to do with decisions that you and I have control over. 42% of energy-related pollution and emissions come from kitchen table decisions like What kind of car are we going to drive? How will we cook our food? How will we dry our clothes? How will we heat and cool our homes? Getting clean electricity, powering our homes and our cars, along with powering industry, cuts 3/4 of carbon pollution, and that's significant. Slide. We'll focus primarily on the IRA, but briefly, the bipartisan infrastructure law allocates money for the big picture stuff like EV charging, public transit, clean energy, carbon capture and sequestration research, passenger and freight rail, environmental remediation, that kind of thing, those big ticket items. Slide. The IRA, when combined with existing policy, has the potential, in short, to lower U.S. emissions by 40% below '05 levels by 2030. That's significant. And much of that is going to come from the consumer side, from you and I switching to EVs and from a transformation in home heating and appliances. We need to have 14 million machines in the U.S. efficient and electric by 2050. But because of the lifetime of appliances being usually 15 years, we have to do that much faster. We need to have 100% of sales of home heating and so on be electric by 2032. Slide. Oh, here it is. Sorry, stay here. The projected economic benefits are outlined briefly here. Each household has the opportunity to save an average of $1,800 a year. There will be likely the creation of more than 9 million new clean energy, fair-paying domestic jobs. And we will be spending as a nation about $50 billion less per year on energy. A young man in the training that we took, all of us went to a one-week training by Al Gore's organization, Climate Reality Project. And a young man, data nerd, said he was directed to build an investment-only package. This is not a giveaway. Slide. A win-win. This legislation is a win for environmental justice, very core to our UU values. It works on an energy system transformation that addresses for the very first time what needs to happen to ensure that the burden doesn't fall on those least able to handle it. The Pope said that the gravest effects of all attacks on the environment are suffered by the poorest, and maybe that's why not more has been done. And in terms of the economy, it's a win because of the jobs it will create, and of course, it's a huge win for the climate. Let's take a quick look at what's at stake. This is what we're working to preserve. Slide. Here is Al Gore's favorite slide. It's a picture from the space station that shows how thin our shell of atmosphere is. If you drove a car from the surface of the Earth straight up at highway speeds, you could reach the top in 5 to 8 minutes. That's how thin it is, and yet that's what we're using as an open sewer. Slide. The largest source of that warming pollution is burning fossil fuels, gas, oil, and coal. And after World War II, not quite yet, Kitty, as you can see, we went on a real bender and we burned so much fossil fuel, and it has mounted up really quickly. Okay, slide. So the cumulative amount today traps as much extra heat in the atmosphere as would be released by 600,000 atomic bombs exploding every day, 365 days a year. And that's why we're seeing so many problems. What problems? Well, let's take a look. Slide. Maui. Washington State, Canada, Europe, Spain, all of those are global disasters, and in the last 7 years, they've caused, 330, let's see, in 2022, they caused $313 billion worth of damage, with Hurricane Ian being responsible for a third of that. And the interval between disasters is shrinking. In the 80s, there was an average of 82 days between disasters. And by the 20s, it was an average of 18 days. Slide. And hotter years mean more fires. The relationship is almost lockstep, as you can see. When the temperature goes up, the wildfire risk goes up. And we've known that for a long time. Slide. The impacts on food and water and health are severe. Water scarcity is plaguing 40% of the world right now. Food is affected when water is affected, and health is affected when food and water is affected. And also, youth are reporting depression. That's not a trivial thing either. Slide. There's been a lot of controversy about gas stoves, and the gas industry is pushing back and saying this is not a big deal. However, research shows that 1 in 8 cases of childhood asthma is caused by the pollution, the indoor pollution from gas stoves, which is primarily in marginalized communities. Benzene, nitrous oxide, formaldehyde are cancer-causing as well as asthma-causing, and gas stoves leak that even when the stove is turned off. Slide. So climate change is the biggest threat, health threat, facing humanity. That's from the World Health Organization. Slide. You add up all of the consequences, disease, political instability, all of these consequences, we can't afford it. And for several years in a row now, the World Economic Forum has said it's the #1 threat to the global economy. So the answer to our first question, must we change, is yes. So, can we change? Slide. The good news is we have the solutions. They're right there. Slide. We get enough solar energy from the sun in 1 hour to meet all of the world's energy needs for an entire year. We're not going to run out. It's affordable, it's abundant. We can get all of the American dream using half of the energy and none of the emissions, if we can work on this. Katharine Hayhoe, my favorite climate scientist and heroine, said, "Clean energy and electrification is a story of flourishing. It's a vision of a bright future. We need to underscore that and help people free themselves from the idea that we're going to take away their cheeseburgers and we're going to take away their trucks." So we can do it, and there is hope. Slide. Another piece of good news, solar capacity is going up. Slide. And the costs are going down. Slide. One reason is that the more you install, the cheaper it gets. And another way of looking at this is that while in 2014, at the time of the Paris Agreement, electricity from solar and wind was cheaper than new coal and gas plants in 1% of the world, that has gone up to where we think that soon it's going to be cheaper in 100% of the world. Slide. Economically, it makes sense too. Investments in renewables and energy efficiency creates 3 times more jobs on average than investments in fossil fuel technologies. So yes, we can transition from dirty fossil fuels to clean energy, and the IRA is really going to help us speed that transition up. So let's look next at our own decisions and electrifying our transportation. Slide. The largest source of emissions in the US, 40%, is transportation. And the transition has already begun. This is showing that globally, electric cars are on the road and the rate of increase is accelerating. This is both battery and plug-in hybrids. Slide. And US sales of EVs increased 50% from 21 to 22, and manufacturers are bringing the price down as well, and that's one of the reasons that they have, that sales have increased. Slide. Rest assured, this is in your handouts, but this is the electric vehicle discounts available. The IRA gives tax credits for both new and used EVs in all vehicle classes. And more good news, you can save $1,500 to $2,000 a year, which I know my colleagues will corroborate, in fuel and maintenance. Again, and for those of you on Zoom, we will collect your emails and I'll get these handouts to you electronically. Slide. Just quickly, I picked out just one of the auto manufacturers announcing that they're phasing out gas vehicles. Slide. The IRA allocates money to electrifying the US Postal Service fleet. This is all good news. Slide. And 36 cities have committed to zero emissions buses starting in 2025. So the legislation helps reduce emissions from transportation, the biggest source in the US. So now let's talk about buildings and specifically our homes. Slide. We can reduce building emissions within our homes, which can, as I said earlier, be dirty fossil fuel plants. Slide. Through building decarbonization. And the IRA contributes assets to people through both tax credits and rebates for helping families go electric. There's also incentives for landlords. Slide. And the benefits, let's just go through them briefly here. Reduced indoor pollution and the health impacts that are disproportionately felt by low-income communities. Rebates and tax credits of heating and cooling throughout the year. The cost benefits are that electric appliances are cheaper over their lifetime. Energy efficiency measures can save about 25% on energy costs. Solar saves. Rebates and tax credits make these upgrades more affordable. That's everything from weather stripping to an induction stove to a heat pump, all of that. And the climate benefits. Burning less fossil fuels means less greenhouse gases heating up the planet. Slide. Oops, go ahead, slide again. I mentioned those verbally. Here are the household benefits summarized, and again, this is all in detail in your handouts. There's no cap on the amount of building electrification tax credits available to the public. Now, the rebates are not quite available yet. The tax credits are immediately available. Rebates will be available shortly. In July 27th, the Department of Energy released grant applications to the states. For us, that's the California Energy Commission, which will be administering those funds. Slide. I mentioned that. Slide. So in summary, every household has a bank account with thousands of dollars in it to electrify. This isn't just about climate, it's about the quality of life. And my electric car owning friends tell me that it's very fun and sexy to drive an electric vehicle. These dollars are going to help you to lower energy costs, have a healthier home, and, slide, they will give you the satisfaction of knowing that you're doing something really important to help the earth heal. However, it is critical that the carrots that are being put out there by the legislation get picked up, not only by American industry, and they've already done that in the first 6 months of this year to the tune of $278 billion, but also by us, by individuals. My final tip is you don't have to do it all at once. You can do an energy audit and do it a little bit at a time and make your plan fit you. And with that, I want to hand out some handouts with the help of Wayne and George and take questions. There's 4 handouts. They have the same title.
Is it one page?
This is back and front. This is a 2-page. This is a 1-page. They're different.
Okay.
So they both have to go out. Any questions? Yes.
Yeah, instead of solar energy panels, I think I read that roofing materials are being produced to absorb solar energy. Do you know anything about that?
I know very little bit about that. Oh, the question is, are building roofing materials being used to help instead of solar panels? I don't know about instead. Thank you, Wayne.
Yeah.
Oh,
A little bit of information about that. It's less true in Ventura than it is in other areas. But in a large majority of areas, the amount of energy consumption. Less true in
Oh, no, you got to come over here because of the Zoom people.
Less true in Ventura than in other areas. But in most houses, energy consumption from cooling the house, air conditioning, is significantly more than the heating of the house. And so one thing that's really easy to do if you're putting a new roof on is to select lighter colored roofing. Lighter colored roofing will reduce air conditioning needs and will reduce energy consumption.
Thank you, Bob.
I'll make some comments on that, too.
Go ahead.
I think the question was, can you put something else besides solar panels? Yes.
Instead of solar
Right.
panels,
Right.
will this roofing material take its place?
Well, there are some roofing materials out there commercially. GAF has some roofing tiles that integrate solar panels in them. And Tesla has the solar tile roofs that they also have made. But yes, if you can cool if you can put a lighter shade on your roof, that certainly helps. It also reflects some of the visible light, which instead of being absorbed, it gets reflected back out in space, which also helps to reduce global warming.
But it's not a substitute, is it, for solar panels?
It is a substitute. Now, the solar tiles and the GAF roofing material are substitutes for. Okay, well, so GAF, they manufacture those tiles.
But it doesn't generate electricity.
Right.
Does
Yes,
it?
it does.
Oh, it
Yeah.
does. Okay, forgive me. All right,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
why you're here.
So anyway, I'm Wayne Morgan. I'm a professional engineer. So
And
anyway,
he's electrified as.
Yeah, I got rid of all the gas in my house, and it's wonderful.
My very simple, very easy, essentially cost-free, minimal thing to do that is significantly helpful, just pick lighter colors for the roof. Simple, cost-free.
Thank you, Bob. Other questions? Celia?
You know, we had solar panels when I lived in my own home. Now I live in a condominium, and I'm wondering what kind of incentives there are for older condominiums that were made in the 80s and 90s. And here I'm frustrated because I'd love to push these along. So do you have any words of wisdom?
Or the condominium association that makes the decision for stuff.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that can be an issue. That can be a problem. There's also community solar that is, I'm really a big fan of community solar, where people sign up and they have a centralized location where maybe on a big building or a parking structure, they can put solar panels, and then the participants get a reduced rate on their electricity bill. It's typically a 20% rate reduction because they're part of that program. So that's something that I really want to see happen in those multi-unit buildings. And there are incentives for, multi-unit apartments and things. There's separate ones for the private residences and also the multi-unit ones. So yes.
Ruth?
Okay, so,
Hang on. Ryan's giving me a magic wand.
Oh, good, thank you.
Is it on? Yes, it is. Okay, so George and I both drive older cars, like cars that are 20 years older. However, I drive less than 4,500 miles a year. George drives maybe less than 6,000 miles a year. When you add in the cost and the energy to produce a new vehicle, and the damage to the environment, to produce the batteries, to produce everything, is it beneficial for us to change over to a brand-new EV car or keep our older cars because we don't have any intentions? And the other question is, since we drive our cars for 20 years or more, we were concerned about the battery life not being that long and having to buy a newer car more frequently. And I didn't know that that would be more efficient.
Okay, well, that's a good question. I think you have to look at your own economic situation to see whether it's worth it for you to, change. So if you're not driving very much, that might make sense. But when you come to replace it in a few, a decade or so, if you drive that, if it lasts that long, there will be lower cost electric vehicles available. In China right now, they're selling an electric vehicle. It's not very big, and it gets about 140 miles, I think, for $10,000. And they're using a battery technology that uses sodium, so there's no exotic minerals in that, so it's very environmentally friendly. The other thing is, let's see, you were talking about battery life. There's quite a bit of data on that. Tesla cars have been around the longest, and their batteries typically last more than 200,000 years, and they tout that they have a 1,000,000-mile battery that's developed already. So you probably won't need to replace your battery, especially if you're only driving, 4,000 miles a year, or 5,000. I have 2 electric vehicles. I love them, and there's another advantage that's going to happen with electric vehicles that I'm not sure people really are aware of, but there was a recent bill that went through the California State Legislature. It was SB 233, and that will require electric vehicles of a certain size to have the capability of powering your home. So in 2030, you will be able to power your home with an electric vehicle. So right now, if you look at your electric bill, the rate that they charge between 4 and 9 or 5 and 8, depending on which time of use plan you have, you're going to pay 50 cents a kilowatt hour, which is really high. So if you can avoid that by plugging in your car, you're going to save money. And I will have no qualms about plugging my car in, because your car draws a lot more power than your home does. So it's not going to harm your battery. And in fact, they've had studies saying that you can possibly gain about $500 a year economic benefit from plugging your car into the house. So you'll need a converter, a bidirectional charger, which would cost probably $1,000 maybe, but you've got, and they'll probably have incentives for that too. But that would be a really great way to not only save money, but you also help stabilize the grid, because during that time period, there's usually a big load on the grid, and that's when the power supply is really stressed. So we can help level out the power supplies with our electric vehicles. So to make a long story short, I guess I'm in favor of electric vehicles.
I want to make sure we get your question here. What is your name?
Amy.
Amy. Oh, you're Amy. Okay, great.
I'm wondering about any information on maintenance and cost of its lifetime and things like that.
The maintenance on the EVs, I think I've had mine, I have 2 EVs, and I think I took it to the shop 2 times, one for tightening bolts and one for changing the tires. The thing about
Cabin filter.
Oh, the cabin filter, right, thank you. The neat thing about electric vehicles is when you slow down, when you're braking, they use that energy to charge the battery, and it doesn't go into your brakes. So you're not heating your brakes, you're not wearing your brakes. So when I come to a stop, I just let off of the accelerator, and I get down to about 8 miles an hour. That's when I put the brake on. I'm never going to have to replace brake pads. So the maintenance, there's no oil change. I've had, it's hardly any maintenance at all. So, and you don't have the fuel costs of, gasoline. I don't go to a gas station. When I'm on a long trip, I stop at superchargers. There are fast DC chargers, which will charge your car. Right now, they charge them to about 120 miles plus in 20 minutes. So, I drive a couple hours. I might stop to get a drink, and all you have to do is plug the charger cable into your car, and you can walk away. You can eat lunch or whatever you want and come back. So it's not like it's...
How much does that cost you to charge your car that way on a trip?
It's about, let's see, let me calculate it here. It's about, I would say it's about 10 cents a mile, maybe. Wow. Maybe less, depending on your car. Maybe a little bit, maybe a little bit more depending on your car. But my car, one of them will get about 8 cents a mile. The other gets about 10 cents a mile. So
It's a far cry from 550.
I just spoke to a friend of mine who owns a Tesla, and she said it's about $2 a gallon. That's the equivalent.
right. Now, if you charge at home and you have solar panels, I don't pay anything. So that's something to look forward to when you electrify your home. One thing I want to mention about the IRA is that we need to look at that as an investment in the future. And the funny thing is that some of the states that were opposed to the IRA, are actually taking great advantage of it now. They're building manufacturing sites in the South that bring in a lot of jobs. They're building batteries and other things, and they're taking advantage of it. So it's an investment. We need to do this. And yes,
No.
Go.
George has been waiting. Then
George.
question in the front.
Thank you. I appreciate Wayne's enthusiasm about converting from burning fuel for transportation to using renewable electricity. But to balance that, I think the Inflation Reduction Act and the bipartisan infrastructure law are balanced. They go beyond transportation. So to answer Ruth's question, it's very interesting to look at what we're actually burning and how. For example, some of us have gas-powered appliances, and if we're spending a lot of time at home, maybe much more than that, the highest priority change could be to replace that gas dryer with an electric one, replace the gas stove with an electric one, especially if people in your household are experiencing asthma. So there's a number of ways that the IRA can help people make this conversion. And it's very exciting that we can improve people's health and adapt this to people's lifestyle. Why is the electric car so interesting? Because when we move around 2-ton pieces of metal, it takes a lot of energy. So yes, if you're driving any significant amount, it's probably better for the environment to get the electric car. But I just want to emphasize the IRA has a lot more in it than just electric cars. So thank you.
Thank you, George. That's a really good point. Is it Neil?
I was real interested, Wayne, in, of course, if we get to the point where we're plugging in our electric car, if we have solar panels, can that negate the need for a battery wall? And also thinking about the benefit of having that ability during a power outage or a disaster.
Yeah, right now, right now you need a battery in order to take advantage of powering your house when you have a power outage, which is something that I don't know if the vehicle-to-home capability is going to solve. I would hope it would solve that. I would think it would solve that. But the thing about solar panels is that the amount of power that it generates fluctuates, immensely. And so you need a stable source of voltage, and that's not going to give it to you. So, you may have a little cloud going over, and you would basically dim out all your power to your house, and you'd have to reset all your clocks, and that's a big hassle. So, currently right now you need a battery to take advantage of that. And I have a battery. You don't need a real big battery to do that. You just need a battery. And I'm lucky because I have enough solar panels. I can charge my car even if the grid is down. So I can get around. So
We have 5 more minutes, and I want to make sure we get everybody.
Charging station infrastructure. On a trip to San Francisco recently, we found that there were charging stations, but many of the chargers were not working. That was very common. And what about the expansion of the charging stations across the country?
yeah, that's an issue. What kind of charger do you have? What kind of plug do you have? A CCS or?
It's a Hyundai Kona.
Yeah, okay. Yes.
Hyundai Kona.
Right. So there are two main standards right now for charging. Tesla has their Tesla plug, and it's been adopted now by many manufacturers. GM is going to it, and some others are, and they're going to call it the North American standard, charging standard. And so Tesla has been in the business of making charging stations since 2012, 2013. So they have a lot of experience. So just going up the 5 freeway, there are some charging stations that have more than 50 available chargers on them, and they have multiple ones on the 5. And on the application that shows up on your screen when you're planning a trip, it'll plan the trip for you and tell you where to stop and how long you have to stop even. But as you go along, you can see how many chargers are actually available. And they take into account if there's a charger that's not working. And it's very rare that I see any Tesla chargers not working.
I have a question.
Tesla chargers.
Shelley said $2 a gallon, and you said 10 cents. What's the discrepancy there? Why is that?
10 cents a mile.
Oh, I see. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And the Tesla converter, can you comment on that?
A question. I didn't take a very deep dive into the handouts that you provided, but one of the barriers for me personally is we have a house built in the mid-'80s, and it will require a lot of retrofitting of the house at significant expense. So is the rebate are the rebates for the hardware, you know, the pumps and the utilities
let me-
themselves, or can any of it be used for construction?
The rebates, by the way, are available to eligible people, which means that your income is 80% or 150% of the median income for the area. It applies to both, I think it's hardware and construction, but
I think so.
yeah, so, and it is still an upfront cost, and that's the reality, and that's why some cities, and why we are trying to work with the city to get them to come up with some additional sources of funding, which are there to help out even more with the transition.
Yeah, there are incentives for like your circuit breaker. You can expand your circuit breaker box and wiring. So those are available. So you can do that. And heat
Some
pumps.
of them are tax credits, right, as opposed to rebates,
Right.
so.
Right, those
and
tax
there's-
credits are now,
Along
yeah.
with IRA, there's also for us the 3C WIN.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
The comment was, some of these are tax credits rather than rebates. So yeah, if you're just looking at the fiscal side of it rather than the planetary side, that would be part of the thinking you would do, depending on your tax situation.
Keep your receipts, make sure you owe money to the government, and that,
That's not hard.
and that your equipment is eligible too. And there, I think I have that on the links where you can go to find out that your equipment is eligible. So it's a complicated program, but it's,
Oh, one more question.
go ahead, George.
And with the magic wand actually had a question.
Oh.
So I only had a chance to glance at the handouts, and you mentioned it, but just in very practical terms, we want to replace our gas water heater with a heat pump. What do I do, and how long do I wait before I do that?
Well, there's some options there. There are some heat pump water heaters right now that you can just plug into your wall.
If I want to take advantage of these programs.
Yeah, I think there are incentives for that.
Absolutely.
Credits,
and-
tax credits, yes.
And that's one of the most important things you can do, Jim, is change your hot water heater.
That's the-
More important than anything else.
Yeah, in Ventura County, more energy is used in the home heating water than any other appliance. Now, you know, transportation takes a lot. It's pales by comparison, but water heaters are the main source of main energy.
So my question was a
users.
little bit more specific, not, oh, does that exist, but what do I do?
Well, full disclosure here, I hate to give the bad news, but it's hard to find a contractor. It's not impossible, and they are scrambling to get these guys trained in what they need to do to make the transition. But that's been a bit of a challenge for me. And I think the first thing you do, I would suggest, is to have a home energy audit. And I think SoCal Edison might do that. There are 3C REN that Allison mentioned is another wonderful local resource that can help you. Do you guys?
Yes, another really good resource is the Community Environmental Council of
Yes,
Santa Barbara.
thank you.
They actually have a plan where they will actually help you
Yeah.
plan to make these changes. So look them up. It's CECSB is their website. And they have, just look at the programs.
It's on
and-
your handouts.
Oh, good, okay,
Yeah.
great.
They are a great local resource
They're
to help you
really good.
with that first step. We are out of time. Is there any, George, I'm sorry, George.
Just to finish that answer, Jim, thanks for your question. We're in the middle of that right now. Started with looking at it with an electrician, asking SoCal Edison to come out, look at the panel, because the panel is going to control how much power you can put into your house and what circuits. And then it's a question of getting bids and deciding where things go. If you're going to route new wiring into your house at 240 volts. That's different from your existing 120 Romex, if you have a house as old as ours. So there's these feasibility questions, and what's going to emerge is there's going to be some technologies are going to be easy to get and slam dunks. You could walk into Lowe's or Home Depot right now and get a heat pump water heater. But what are you going to plug it into? You've got to have a 240 volt
Not
outlet.
necessarily, not necessarily.
There are some 120
120s out
volts
there.
now, and they're becoming more available, but, so there's a little bit of complexity, and it helps to call SoCal Edison to have them look at your panel, and IRA does help you get that updated panel if you want more power capacity in your house.
You may decide that all you need is weather stripping, or, you know, there's. That's true.
You can go to the public library this week and check out a special kit that allows you to try out induction cooking
Induction stove,
for
yeah.
free. And included in the kit is some free weather stripping. And it can be really fun to electrify your house. So I hope you try it.
One quick tip. If you're going to advocate for getting air conditioning, get a heat pump, because
Absolutely.
it comes
yeah.
with the unit. So you get the heating and the cooling in one unit. So that's a great step to take.
Thank you all for your interest and time, really appreciate it. And I'm going to just part with this one thought. We are frequently asked, you know, what's the most important thing I can do about climate change? And I used to answer by saying just the same answer as what's the best workout program. It's the one that you will actually do. Same thing with climate change. It's what draws you, what you can do, what you can afford. But if it's in the direction of electrification, it's much more important than just about anything else you can do, except voting. Thank you.